Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. In this video, we're going to be planting some annuals along our front turf border. We've left some pansies in place. We have pansies out here during the winter time, and they underperformed big time this year because we had that nasty freeze back in December. Really stunted them, almost killed them. It's the first time I've ever had pansies go that far backwards, and so they've had to recover slowly, but they're just starting to look pretty good, and the things that we're adding to this bed bloom a little later. There's some salvia, an annual salvia going in here. It's actually a perennial salvia, but we'll treat it as an annual along the front of the bed. We did it from seed, and some ageratum, and those things typically bloom a little bit later in the season, and so they'll have to get some roots under them. So in the meantime, these pansies should continue to fill in and look and give a lot of color out here while we wait for these things. I've also got some celosia. If you can find this new look, any of these new look celosias, they're all fantastic. We've used them in the garden the last few years. They bloom heavily. The pollinators love them. They have great foliage colors, great flower colors. So that's the approach. This was edged, and then some additional compost was put in here. Generally, I pull all the pansies out at one time and then compost it, and then it's pretty easy, but this time I had to put the compost around the pansies somewhat. But we rejuvenate the annual beds each time that we plant annuals, so there's a small amount of compost put back in, just whatever I feel like those annuals used up the last time around, because we're just trying to get as much out of them as we can. This 4-pack down at Big Bloomers in Kinston, North Carolina was $2.29, and then the we did the salvia from seed, and we did the ageratum from seed as well. And we've got one other ageratum that we've done from seed that's just not quite ready to go in yet, that'll get blended in here. And then a couple other accents that we also did from seed that will go in here. So grand total, not very much. Like we're talking about 3 packs of seed and 1 4-pack. This won't look like we changed a whole lot this morning because, again, these things bloom a little bit later in the season. It'll probably be mid-May before we see any flowers on these ageratum. Same thing with the salvia that we did from seed. The celosia shows a little bit more color, immediately with the red stems and the kind of burgundy foliage on it. We have 3 different ageratum that we're using. One is not quite ready to put in the ground this morning, so we're going to hold off a few days, get a little bit more root development on them, and then we'll pop them in between the ones we have. But we have kind of a periwinkle color, a lighter lavender color, and then a raspberry color. And so those are going to be blended in the back. We have a perennial border. There are perennials planted behind the pansy row and these annuals, the annual space that we have. So we're going to have perennials coming up big and tall, the ageratum slightly under that, and then right on the front row, that salvia stays a little smaller, that celosia stays a little smaller, and we'll probably pop a couple other things in here that have a little bit of color, but all of these things are going to be great for pollinators all summer long. And I fertilized the entire garden earlier in the maybe a month and a half ago or something like that at this point, maybe 2 months at this point. This year's flying by somehow. That between that and the compost that was put down, that's all the fertilizing I'm going to do. Say in every one of these planting videos when I'm talking about fertilizer, I would rather look at it to decide whether I'm going to fertilize it or not. I'm not going to fertilize it because it's Tuesday and the package says fertilize every 7 days. I'm going to fertilize it because I'm seeing that it's not performing at its peak level. And then I might use something like flower tone, some sort of organic fertilizer on them if I see that. But typically, we've not really had to refertilize. Again, we're prepping these annual spaces for the biggest show we can possibly get with the compost, recomposting them and allowing them to really have a big root space to root out in, with the soil being loose and redone each season. So there you go. Again, it's not a big change, but one thing we did differently here is we're salvaging or keeping our pansies, which typically will burn out for us here in the South about June, but we normally rip them out before May. And so this year we're going to enjoy them a little bit longer while we wait for this ageratum and other things to fill in. We're just popping them right in the middle of them. We're gonna do something similar in our vegetable garden, just popping our tomatoes and peppers and things into our lettuce and letting our cool season vegetables go as long as possible. So similar type of interplanting going on there. We filmed that part on the other side of the turf over there, and then we bought some of the Zahara raspberry ripple zinnias, which we had along this side last year, and so we wanted to repeat it because the photos and they're just absolutely stunningly beautiful. They'll start off kind of more pinkish, and then they get a little more white in them later in the season, but this is just absolutely one of our go-to annuals. We did some from seed as well, but ours are still pretty tiny, and so I wanted to get a jump start on a few here, and we'll just use the others somewhere else or use them in containers or whatever. But this is in addition to what we did over there on the other side of the turf, and I'm actually going to go back over there in just a second and add a couple. I'm leaving these pansies in place for now, and I'm just going to let these settle in, and then I'll pull these pansies out a little bit later. We're pulling some pansies, not pulling others. I'm going to pull one right now, though. I know this hurts people's feelings, but that one is just flat out in my way. As soon as we get our normal mid to late spring temperatures, our pansies start burning out. So anyway, there's 4. I'm putting a total of 12 plants in here, and they will fill in beautifully. These are just amazing for being powdery mildew resistant. Other zinnias can get, taller growing zinnias are definitely susceptible to powdery mildew, but these not so much. I'm going to pull one more of these pansies here. Again, it's a little bit in the way. One more of these over here, and these are just going to be perfect. You can see the photos from last year. Oh, I already got one there. It's just compost added on top of last year's. I'm planting right into that compost. Steph and I did the Salvia, the Ageratum, and the Celosia yesterday, and then I left the pansies in place, and then came back and stood back and looked and realized that this just wasn't going to be thick enough. So we got another 4 of these new look red Celosia, and I'm just going to space them in between the ones that we already put in, about evenly spaced in the middle of them, and out toward the front. And then we have the purple Salvia there, the Victoria blue is what it is. We got a flat of, or 1 pack of white, and so I'm just going to kind of go in here and space these white ones out where I really love white in the annual borders. It really stands out from a distance, and there's a good spot for that one right there. And then we did these Tower Asters from seed. This is Tower Violet Aster. All these Tower Asters are really great for giving you color during the summer. It'll get a little bit taller than these things in the front, so I'll come back in about the middle of the bed. I only have 3 of them that I'm going to use here, and add that in here. I'm just looking for gaps because we did, again, space it a little too much. And then I've got a Vista Lavender Salvia that's going to get probably pretty tall that we'll add in here. This is going to go from, I think we had left it a little boring, to Holy moly. That's where we're heading. That's where we're heading with this now. So I'll get these plugged in real quick. I wrapped this video up one other time, but I'm taking that ending off and putting this ending on. Sometimes, you know, you're gonna stand back, you've got a plan, and we had a pretty good plan for, you know, it was gonna be pretty showy, but it was gonna take so long to fill in. And again, with annuals, I'm really trying to get as much out of them as quickly as I can get out of them. I'm trying to spend as little money as possible, so I'm not buying a lot of the new patented things. I'm doing what I can from seed. Did buy these 2 packs of Salvia that were $2.29, and started the Asters on our own here, the Ageratum, and the purple Salvia, but not the white one. So just bought a 4-pack of white Salvia. I don't know what, Steph went and picked that up, so I don't know how much that was. But again, I've got very little in this annual border, and I think you'll see over the course of the summer how showy this is gonna be. You know, if you look at any of the photos from previous years out here, you know, we really, really want this to put on a show, and we want the pollinators to enjoy it all summer. So thank you guys for following along. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you can see how this turns out this summer. So we pick things that are very much for the pollinators. So the Ageratum is probably not the showiest annual in the world, although quite showy. You'll see that during the summer months. But in this particular Salvia, it's probably not the showiest Salvia in the world, but they are incredible for pollinators. So that's our goal here. So do you have any plans this season to put any pollinator plants into your garden, and what are they?